is not so much, what degree do you need to have, but it's about what problems do you want to solve, what kind of lifestyle do you want to have, and then education is a means to that end, right? Instead of thinking about it in, college and career, we're really trying to think about career before college, the college being the means to the career. As Executive Director of Career and College Success, I oversee all college coursework at the secondary level, all career and tech education, all work-based learning, so internships, apprenticeships, getting our students to experience work in school and then experience work out of school in the community. And then all things to what you said, counseling is my background. I will forever be a school counselor. Graduation, dropout, prevention, online intervention, really getting kids back on track. So what keeps me busy these days is really trying to look at efficiencies, right? With our reorg and kind of where we landed just before the reorg after the pandemic, we just celebrated the district's highest graduation rate in the history of DPS, which is amazing, and aiming only for upward trend. So we're looking at increased opportunity for all students. We have about 6,000 or 7,000 students who take college level courses a semester.
Wow.
And our internships, our work-based learning team that I will brag about to no end because I support them. I did not set them up. They are brilliant and do it on their own. They are nationally known for the work that they do. So there's a lot of success, and now it's looking at efficiencies to see how we can scale for even greater opportunity for students. Making sure that we've got systems in place, data systems, relationships with our community college partners and our work-based learning partners, our community, to support our students in their development with the overall goal that all of our kids get to be exactly what they want to be without micromessage or limitations, that we are setting them up for that opportunity, and that there's no large system issue or adult issue that gets in the way of doing that. So,
wow. As you describe all the many opportunities that kids have from high school to college, and even while they're in high school, as they get ready for the real life outside of beyond high school, you really make me think of the future and what Denver or the United States or even the world is going to look like 10, 20, 30 years from now beyond the classroom. So it's super cool to think about that. And I really want to dive into it. But first, I wonder if you can share as well where did all of this start? You,
sure.
You've obviously been in DPS, but also outside of DPS. Yeah. And I wonder, I'm curious to know your story. Yeah. Why is this work so important to you?
No, great question. So I knew I wanted to be a school counselor when I was like 15, 16. My aunt was a social worker at Cleo Wallace, and it was take your daughter to work day, and my mom couldn't take me to work, so I went with my aunt. And I loved what she did. She helped students. She engaged with them, kept them in healthy places. And then when they were not in healthy places, she helped bring them back. And I just really loved that. And I did a lot of youth work, a lot of volunteering through high school, but was a peer counselor in high school and just went straight through bachelor's and master's program because I knew what I wanted to do with my life. Similar to what I'm trying to set up for students, what my team is trying to set up is like the exposure, finding what you love from an early age and knowing that you're not just committing to one thing forever, right? It's an ongoing, I never would have seen myself in a central admin role.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, wasn't aiming really, but became a school counselor, started in Fort Lupton, which is a one high school, small town, rural school, and loved my work. Moved to Loveland and was the career and college counselor and the gifted and talented counselor for the school. So worked with kids way smarter than me for half my caseload, and then the other half of my caseload was doing all college and career advisement for the 1,100 students in the school. And
for 1,100?
Yeah. that's when you have to think about systems, right? That's when ICAP became legislated, and we started doing a lot more of the classroom kind of involvement, larger scale kinds of conversations. I did obviously some individual NCAA and stuff like that, but I loved that job and probably would not have left. But my job was being cut right in the middle of the first round of education cuts, 2010, 11 in there. And I was always on that chopping block. And my family's from Denver area. I have 3 grandparents that graduated from DPS high schools. So have always tried to get into DPS, but didn't have the opportunity until 2011. And I was hired, got to be a part-time school counselor at Tre Vista, and then worked central overseeing a federal grant that also supervised 4 other school counselors across the district as we grew students from 6th grade through 12th grade for their graduation and their college and career. Was in that role for about a year, and then had the opportunity and loved my job as the director of counseling and college access. Did that for, 8 years. That's before becoming executive director. And honestly, my journey has been about opportunity, just saying yes to opportunity when it arises, and not being afraid. Like I don't ever want to back down from a fight. I will work my ass off and do whatever we need to in order to do what we can best for our students and our family and our community. So
the fact that you finished high school and going to college was a non-negotiable, technically. Now it's different. What do you think the main differences are from that landscape where you were in high school and now the high school kids? Because now going to college, I think of my own kids. They're too young. But I don't know that college by 10, 15 years from now, I don't know college is going to be even the number one priority.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it varies by community, where what we used to call vocational education and blue collar jobs were a second class kind of role. I think that's shifted a lot. There's a lot of opportunity and a lot of money in some of those career fields that, as educators, we paid a lot for our education, did a lot to get here, and aren't coming to work for the paycheck necessarily, but for other motivations. There's a lot of opportunity in those fields now, and I think where we're trying to go is not so much, what degree do you need to have, but it's about what problems do you want to solve, what kind of lifestyle do you want to have, and then education is a means to that end. Instead of thinking about it in, college and career, we're really trying to think about career before the college being the means to the career. So,
which multiplies exponentially the amount of opportunities our kids have.
Yeah.
Because when you talk about college, there are these somehow abstract opportunities for kids to engage in, like engineer or whatever branch of engineering. And a 17, 18-year-old might not know exactly what that implies. Right. So they get into a college pathway, a huge debt if they don't get a scholarship, and they might not be clear on what that specifically means. But then if you change to pathways or to another opportunities for them to explore, I just love what you said about it's not about what degree, it's about what problem do you want to solve. And as a young adult or as a late teenager, you start seeing the problems and the things that you want to engage in solving. So super practical.
Yeah, and I recognize a lot of our students, when you ask them, regardless of what age, what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to do after high school? They usually repeat to you what it is that they have seen the most. So, anywhere from cosmetologist to I want to play in the NFL, even though I've never touched a football before. But that's a role that is honored in my family, my community. So I want to be honored by my community, so that I think that that's what I want to do. I can't tell you how many times I've signed students up for like job shadows for veterinarian, and they go and they come back and they're like, "Oh, miss, that was so depressing. All of the kids or all the animals are all sick." And it's like, Yes, that's a part of what a veterinarian does. And they're like, I'm out. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a lawyer because I don't like reading that much. I don't enjoy that on a daily basis. Great. That's super valuable to know what you don't want to do. So we can start narrowing it down to what you want to do. But I think one unique challenge that we see in Denver is that a huge number of our students are living in poverty and are seeing first generation kind of jobs, careers. They're not exposed to just the huge amount of careers that I think are available to them unless we design some of this programming that we can get them that experience and give them that social capital just to witness it and see themselves in that and see other people who look like them and sound like them and speak multiple languages in those fields as well. It's such a cool place to be.
And the needs are obvious, and the needs are, especially in a district as large as DPS, you can see so many diverse needs and also a wide variety of talents.
Huge variety of talents. Yeah, speaking of high school, I took Spanish for 3 years and then stopped taking Spanish because I had taken the number of years that I needed in order to get into my college. So, and now every day I lament that I stopped speaking Spanish. And I look at our students, and we had, wasn't last year, it was the year before, we had 95 students plus that graduated as multilingual, multiliterate.
That's phenomenal.
That's phenomenal. What a cool skill you have that. I think the ship has probably sailed for me. You know, they say learning a language at a young age is where it's really important. But what? Oh.
Well, you could still.
Oh, I'll try. Yeah. I'll do my best.
Just try to talk in Spanish during happy hour. You build the courage, and then you replicate that courage in other environments, and then you're perfect.
There you go.
That's my theme. I hear CMS is the only dual language school in the whole Southwest with a K-5 model. And that is exactly what I tell my families. Right. These babies, you're not only giving them the opportunity to become bilingual, you're giving them a lifetime gift.
Yes.
So encouraging them to earn that seal of biliteracy and to just go to the workforce the week after graduating from high school and showing a diploma that says, hey, look at this seal. I can be your translator
kidding.
now.
Yeah.
And I am certified to do it academically and just conversationally as well. So, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
There are many other things as well that the community has as strengths and that I see that you and your leadership role, you also try to leverage by having CTE and all those pathways. Before we dive into those opportunities that students have, would you mind stopping a little bit to talk about what equity is for you?
Yeah.
How do you define equity within the context of what you do?
For me, in this role, for the work that I do, is about equal opportunity for all and honoring every individual for all that they bring to the table. There are very significant barriers for students that pop up in any kind of way. It was a couple years ago, I was curious. We did some data digging around our free and reduced lunch, right? There's a lot of research about students living in poverty and the impact that can have on a student, doesn't have to have, but can have on a student. And at the time, we were 77% students of color, and our 77% students of color were living in poverty 80% of the time. And our 23% white students were on free and reduced lunch 22% of the time. The experience that those students and those families have is very different. The resources, not just in money, but in time. You know, time is the one resource that we can't make any more of. And having lived with a single mother, you know, she had 2 jobs sometimes, and the amount of time that she could spend with me was less than she would have wanted out of necessity. When it comes to equity, what I see our role in DPS is leveling any sort of playing field that we can. I can't control poverty, but I can control future generations, or not control. I can contribute to future generations and changing generational wealth, right? So Equity is very much what brings me to Denver public schools. I think I would very much struggle if I were working with a more privileged population. And as I mentioned, I come from like a real nerdy background. Ed law and policy is a real passion of mine. And I see it a lot in our laws, even current laws, but also historical, the way things are set up in a racial construct to privilege a very specific group of individuals and disprivilege others. And I think, we still see trying to get out from under that. We still, with the Poundstone Act, very much set up in the busing history.
What do you say?
The Poundstone?
I have no idea.
The Poundstone Act, when after DPS versus Keys, and we started busing our students to different neighborhoods, Poundstone Act was created so that DPS's boundaries could not expand. People on the outskirts of the city of Denver had gone for this because they didn't want to see their students bused to schools with our students. And so the Poundstone Act essentially put into place a law that says that a city has to go to the voters of the other city, county, community in order to make the agreement to purchase the land.
Okay.
So that we couldn't just expand our boundaries beyond where we were. It's only ever been used once, to my knowledge, and it was with Adams County so that Denver could purchase the land that we built DIA on, because we were the only tax base that could afford to build an international airport within Colorado. Wow. So it's just a law that is based out of racist, fears and constructs, and that's an overt one. There's a lot of policies, and I think that's another reason why I like the role that I'm in is we can address policy in DPS. We can change procedure. Once we see the impact, positive or negative, on our students, we can either enhance it or eliminate it as a barrier. And as a school counselor, it's very much what I did. It's very much what your wife does. It's just at a different level is all. Anyway, your whole question was about equity. That was a long, rambling answer.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for getting into it, because that allows me to ask you now, what is DPS doing through giving kids opportunities in order to alleviate those inequities in the city, in the state, in the country?
Mm-hmm. So, when speaking about like our in my world anyway, the number one way that I know that we're providing students with greater opportunity is we're graduating our students to a higher extent with a higher standard. They have to show competency now. They have to complete the ICAP, which tells us that they have an individualized career and academic plan that is unique to them, that hopefully isn't founded in micro messages, although I know those micro messages will always play a role in who any of us are.
What kind of micro messages are you thinking?
Anywhere from like gender roles to race and ethnicity. When I was a kid, I was told I was not good at math. They were not the roles that girls played. And looking at all my test scores now as a grown adult who does that, right? Math is what carried me through all of my test scores. Math was my thing. But it's those little micro messages which landed me. I've got a doctorate in psychology, and I love what I do, so grateful for that. But what other roles or careers could any of us play without a micro message or something being fed to us?
That game of stereotypes. You're a girl, you're Latino, maybe your Spanish is stronger than your English. What can you do where you don't have to talk too much?
Right.
Things of that nature.
Yeah.
I celebrate so much all the initiatives that DPS have led towards giving high school students the opportunity to take college-level classes. Mm-hmm. What an amazing gift and opportunity for all the kids. Mm-hmm. When I was a high school teacher, I spent 4 years teaching AP Spanish language and AP Spanish literature. Yeah. Through my wife and the work she's done, I see all the partnerships with Red Rocks University, with Arapahoe, with Denver, with CU. It's I mean, it's almost infinite. Every high school has college and career pathways. Yeah. It just makes me so proud. Yeah. I have my own children in DPS, and I cannot wait to see what is it that they are going to discover in DPS, because there are so many opportunities for them. And when you talk about things like ICAP and all those programs, they not only exist for high schoolers. You can see ICAP processes even at the elementary level. Would you mind expanding a little bit about what ICAP is and why is it important to the kids, to teachers as well?
So ICAP, Individual Career and Academic Plans, is in the state as state legislation. I don't usually like to start there because I think you make a lot of things unpopular when you make them required. So founded in a lot of research. Colorado's not the only state to have legislation like ICAP. It's in some 40-some states in the United States. Our state law is 9th through 12th grade. Our policy in DPS is a required individual plan for 6th through 12th grade students. And then we do have the lessons and all of the opportunities for elementary starting in 1st grade to help them explore careers and their interests in themselves. And, what does it mean to be a good employee, and how is a good employee similar to a good student? Attendance is a big thing. If you don't show up to work, you're probably not going to get paid. If you don't show up to school, you're probably not going to learn that well. So the research behind it, which is largely studied by Dr. Scott Solberg out of Boston, talks about when a student finds their passion, finds their interest in their careers and how it relates to them and how school relates to them, then their attendance goes up, their grades go up, their test scores go up, all these amazing things. And from a theoretical standpoint, we are developing our workforce, and we're teaching our future workforce to be agile and nimble and passionate. And all communities will benefit from that, right? We're preparing students for jobs that we don't know what they are, what exists. So ICAP is about find what you love, do what you love, make sure that, it fits your need. And then when you don't love it anymore, then what else do you love? And find that new love. And how else can you contribute and problem solve and all of that? So I think ICAP for DPS is specifically important at the younger grade levels, where we're a large community and we've got a lot of very cool jobs and students and families, and a lot of opportunity for imagination. So if we started at the younger age, maybe those of us that get to live in the community can benefit from how brilliant our students are going to be when they are grown-ups.
I would say that ICAP, beyond legislation, is also a vocation-grounded initiative. It's a way to have kids explore what they want to be and actually make it happen, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Besides ICAP, what are the other things that DPS offers for the community so kids, young adults are ready for career?
No, I love that question. And I, with the reorg, we've had some opportunity to rethink kind of where we're going in this future. And a shout out to my director of CTE, Dr. Jamie Fiorenza, is looking at all of our CTE pathways with the overall goal that our students will leave a CTE pathway with some sort of certification. So some way that they can enter entry-level workforce while they continue their after high school education in whatever way that might be. So we're ensuring that our students have a future in high-growth, high-wage industries specifically, not in career pathways that will lead them to, a low-wage job or low-respect kind of work, but really imagining. So I'm going to tell the story of Samuel, who's over at CEC, and I just met him, and I ooze over Samuel because it's the image of exactly what I hope for all of our students, right? Samuel is a student from another school who took some entry-level medical classes and decided that he was curious enough about it that he's a part-time student at CEC. And in that, he's in the medical field. So he has his EKG certification. He will graduate with his EMT. He has done 2 internships. One internship he learned was not in a field that he wanted to really be in. And the second internship he's really thriving and loves. His vision for his life will be he's going to graduate from high school. And while he decides whether he wants to be nursing or pre-med, he will work as an EMT and use those as the next stepping stools so that he can, find his own version of the future. And someone had asked him the question about if, his peer population, his friends were supportive of how ambitious and well thought out he was. And he very thoughtfully said, a good friend is going to root for you and they're going to challenge you. They're never going to make fun of you for what you see yourself doing in the future. That's not a good friend. And it just was like, if I could replicate Samuel in our 30-year-old population in our community,
I know.
that would be amazing.
I was just going to comment on that precisely. The gap, unfortunately, I observe this very often. The lack of purpose that many adults in this country and all the other countries I am aware of, including my home country of Venezuela, the lack of purpose, the lack of finding something where I can make meaning and therefore engage and do life in a way that is fulfilling to me. That is one of the consequences of going through high school and going through college, not knowing exactly what you want because precisely you didn't have those opportunities. And what you said earlier, I echo that all the time. We repeat the professions we want to be based on how often we're exposed to those things. And at some point we realize oh crap, I wanted to be a wide receiver, but I'm 5'5", and I don't run that fast. But I'm 23. What do I do? So the lack of purpose and the sense of direction that 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, 25-year-olds have makes it difficult for the society to function, which is, everybody lives their life and their own pathways. It's not that it's too late for you to find your purpose.
Right.
You can find exactly what you want to be at the age that you were meant to find it. But my point is, if we help you when you're 13 by giving you those internships, by giving you those opportunities, I am sure that by the time you're 19, you will be more mature, possibly more equipped, and like Samuel, they will be giving you those kind of mature answers. So the consequences of doing this work are still unmeasured because we don't know what are the other positive payouts that our society and individuals will get 10, 20 years from now. And that's why I celebrate it so much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sam. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, go Samuel. I'm all about.
What are the hardest pieces of your job right now? What are the things that are like, oh, crap?
I would say we work in a very large bureaucratic system. And with a large bureaucratic system comes a lot of intricate policies and procedures that can, even well-intentioned, get in the way. Right now, we are navigating a relationship with Community College of Denver, like I said, to expand and scale the number of students that we have in college classes. And with that, we have 2 giant bureaucratic systems that don't play naturally together, that are trying to play nicely together.
Which are the university and the...
And K-12. We're under different laws, different regulations, different accountability systems and structures. There's different pressures in both worlds. And so trying to understand both systems so that our students in every single school can have access to all of the education that they could ever want I wouldn't say it's like an oh shit kind of a thing, but it's one of the more challenging kind of enigmas or problems. From a data point, one data point that does get my heart going a little bit is our dropout rate. we saw an increase in dropout to a pretty significant extent, as did the nation and students and schools in the state through pandemic. And I think we've got a handle as to why a lot of our students did find success in the workforce. And in that, they have different responsibilities. They are paying the electrical bill for their families and are making decent money by working during the day. And we don't, as a system, have a school that will address their unique situation and their unique needs. We also had students that, moved out of state to be closer to family during pandemic. And so I think that's one of those data points that we're going to do some work on. We're going to figure it out. We're going to get to the bottom of it. And maybe we need to rethink some of our systems so that we can fill the need more appropriately for students and families, which I'm very grateful we have leadership right now that's encouraging us to think of things differently and redo systems as they need to be done.
I heard a piece of data about the U.S. during the pandemic. Hundreds of thousands of children, if not millions, disappeared from school rosters, and we don't know where they are now. It's not that they got kidnapped; it's just that they exited the educational system. Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah,
we don't know. We don't know anything about them.
Right,
and that is so raw and unfortunate to just face as an organization.
And speaks to what our students and our families experienced during that time, where I need to examine my own privilege of I was a fully employed adult who could afford to safely stay home and work from home during that time. That wasn't the case for many people.
I know. And at least you leveraged that privilege to impact those who couldn't, which is always something to be thankful for.
Yeah.
You mentioned that right now we have strong, good leadership that allow us to maybe navigate that bureaucracy between college and high school. Why is that leadership strong? And if you were to describe the attributes of a good leader, what would those attributes be?
I think the specific attribute, when I say strong, what I see is a leader who's unafraid, a leader who's willing to be curious, willing to do things differently and consider things differently, and potentially be unpopular. Having worked Central for 10 years now, one of the things that I tell people when they are starting a leadership is you are going to be unpopular some of the time. And if you're not unpopular with 5 to 10% of the population at a given time, you're probably not pushing hard enough. People are comfortable and with that. I'm not saying that you should seek out to become unpopular. But if we continue to stay in our comfort zone, we're never going to learn anything. We're never going to do anything different. And education is a prime example of a system that has largely remained unchanged for 200 years. And is a system that is very much set up to privilege the privileged. So we need to think of things differently. And with that, we're going to make some people uncomfortable, and we're going to challenge kind of preconceived notions or challenge things that used to work for students that don't work for our students anymore. And so I see that willingness to have the discussion about why a decision might be what's best for our students or our schools now, and willing to hear the feedback of like, no, we hate that, right?
Right.
And why do we hate that? Do we hate that because it changes, ways that we want to do things and the ways that we're comfortable with doing things? I think a lot of people over pandemic, to be fair, are exhausted from change management and are tired of it. But I think, a good leadership attribute is one that is going to keep eyes on the goal, which is our students and our community. And if that makes us controversial or stand apart from mainstream or popular, then
when it comes to standardized assessments, right, and how legislation measures student performance based on one specific measure, it is tricky because, well, it is necessary to assess our kids.
Sure.
We do need to know where they are in relationship to where they're going. There has to be a measurement of progression. Our frameworks like LEAP in Denver Public Schools have an indicator that is precisely about checking for understanding. And checking for understanding itself is a way of assessing, right? Like you do it every certain time during your lessons to make sure that your kids are progressing. The thing is the idea of standardize, right? How can we, in a equity-driven or in a place where we see the uniqueness or how individual every kid is, how do we fit the standardized piece? And just perpetuating those families and groups of people who have the resources to get the kids ready and those who don't.
Back to my ed law and policy nerdy background, like that really sings to me in that, you know, the legislation that we're under now was actually written in the 1960s, and we just have never figured it out. We are behind the times in what is standardized, why standardized, who decides what standard is, and we test such limited ability when it comes to standardization. Like I have seen kids with abilities and talents in ways that I've never, like I wish that I could get there, but won't. But they maybe aren't testing, you know, at the standard. I had a student, this was years ago, I was going to date myself, but as a school counselor, we were on the ACT. She got a 17 on the ACT, had a 4.0, was denied into one of our local four-year colleges, and I had to have a conversation with them around, like, it's because she doesn't do well in a timed 4-hour environment, but she will knock any project out of the park. She's just going to not do it in your timeline. She'll meet a deadline for it, but she's going to take it home. She's going to work on it all hours of the night because that's her process. The ACT doesn't measure that process. They measure their own very specific version of what that is. So 60 years of legislation, and we still haven't figured out how we mark progress in education.
And we do know, amen, yes, 60 years of legislation, and probably even longer when we look at how do we measure performance in our society. But in addition to that, we also know that the most successful adults do not succeed because of the GPA they graduated with from high school. In fact, we know that there are other personality and character traits that will make sure that will guarantee that you will have a successful life, which includes you defining what success means to you. So we know better. We know that a test score, a GPA, does not equate or translate into success. We know that there are other traits of human nature, of development, of societies that guarantee success. So we know better. Now we just need to do better. We just need to put it into action.
Right.
And that takes me back to why I am so excited to have you today, because many of the things that you're leading for are precisely to have kids to explore other pathways, other ways, you know, putting emphasis in colleges and college classes while they're in high school. But in addition to that, you can explore all these other options. So it is beautiful work. It is beautiful work. And I do celebrate that for DPS.
Thank you.
It also makes me wonder if you could change one thing in the educational system within your lifetime, assuming, you know, that there is time, there is resources, that people would listen and reflect on it. What would be that one thing that you would like to see changed?
I don't know that I could like bring it down to one thing is my challenge. I saw the question previously, but because I think, you know, if I could change the micro messages told to our students, and, you know, thinking about Samuel, and Samuel surrounds himself by supportive friends, if I could guarantee that every interaction that every student had was in a supportive way, that would be amazing. I would love to see that in my lifetime. I think what's more in my control in current world state is every single student within our boundaries could access their career and their college choices at the same rate. I see inequities in neighborhoods based off of structures, right? Like a bell schedule over here, or a teacher who doesn't have the credential that they need to teach that college class at this school. And really what it is it's creating access, because a large percentage of our students, while we are a school of choice district, and that's our vision and our mission, a lot of students stay in their neighborhood schools because that's where their brothers and sisters go, or their cousins, or their friends. And so while, the school might have my cybersecurity career path that I'm jazzed about, like, well, but my ride to school is going to this school that is focused on healthcare that I'm not interested in. I would hope that we, in a very short period of time, actually is the goal, would find a way for us to cross student enrollment in a way that is functional for both the school system and the student, so that a student can access any program or any class that brings them passion and joy. Because a student's career future shouldn't be, determined by what neighborhood they grew up in. I didn't pick the neighborhood I grew up in. I don't know if you grew. I don't know many kids who were able to do that. I know, if you go to a smaller school, there's going to be less choices and less career opportunities. But there's so many benefits of going to a small school. Similarly, large schools have lots of clubs and lots of opportunities, but you may not find the community that you're seeking that you might find in a small school. So within my role or career here, in the fight that I'm going to pick right now for our foreseeable future is going to be providing that open access and opportunity in any way that I can. And I know it's going to be an uphill battle, because there's a lot of the reasons why things are the way that they are very real. Yeah. But I think we can figure it out. I want to build an aerospace program. We could graduate students with their pilot's license before they graduate high school. There's a whole thing out there called drone soccer that I think our kids would totally get into that and have all kinds of cool futures. We're you can be a drone pilot, I think, by the age of 14.
Really?
And a real estate agent will hire you to do a drone video of a house they're selling for $1,500. That's a lot of money for a 14-year-old.
To play with a drone?
Right.
Do we just go after school and play with the drone and take pictures and make videos of this school place?
Right.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I know.
Well, it has been a real pleasure, Sam.
Same.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really wish that you continue to do the work you're doing. And this is what our kids deserve. Mm-hmm. And hopefully we can bring you back in the future so you can just talk to us a little bit about at least one of the amazing projects that you're leading for and educate the rest of the leaders.
Yeah. Well, I'll at least come and visit on May 4th for your career day.
Yes. Yeah, let's talk about that.
That sounds fun.
Thank you, Sam. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.